Mr. Mansoor.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, I'd like to thank Mr. Abdul Rahman for his great speech. It was quite informative. Alhamdulillah. Also, I'd like to thank Shahir Forum for this opportunity for me to share the knowledge I've gained in the past few months on this topic. Today, my topic is regarding the introduction and evolution of Islamic architecture in India, which is better known as the Indo-Islamic architecture. The medieval period saw great developments in the field of architecture in India. With the coming of Muslims to India, many new features and techniques came to be introduced into the buildings. The development of Muslim style of architecture of this period can be called the Indo-Islamic architecture. This style was neither strictly Islamic nor strictly Hindu. It was actually a mixture, a combination of both, having Islamic architectural elements embedded into those which are existing in India currently. Bold contrasting colors of masonry with red sandstone and white marble introduced what is to become a common feature of Indo-Islamic architecture. It substituted the polychrome tiles used in Persia and Central Asia. The pointed arches come together slightly at the base, giving a mild horseshoe effect. And their internal edges were not cups but lined with conventional spearhead projections, similar to the lotus jali stoneworks which are existingly used in the temple. The architecture of the medieval period can be divided into two main categories: the architecture of the Delhi Sultanate and that of the Mughal Empire. The Delhi Sultanate again can be further divided into the Tughlaq dynasty, the Deccan Sultanate, the Bengal Sultanate, Gujarat Sultanate, and the Kashmiri Sultanate. So the imperial style developed under the patronage of the Sultans of Delhi, whereas the Mughal architecture was a blend of Islamic architecture with that of Central Asia. Starting with the Delhi Sultanate, it was predominantly spread in and around Delhi, and it gradually spread to various parts of the Indian subcontinent for over 3 centuries, from 1206 to 1526, particularly during the Tughlaq dynasty. The rule of Sultanate comprised of 5 successive dynasties, starting from the Mamluk dynasty and ending with the Lodi dynasty, when it was defeated by Babur, who formed the Mughal Empire in 1526. A mix of Indian and Arabic styles of architecture emerged during the Delhi Sultanate that developed into a peerless form of art and architecture comprising of architectural brilliance from both Hindu and Muslim architects. Some of the unique features of this period of architecture is the palpable style of palace design with elaborately decorated and embellished arches and domes. Teachings from Holy Quran and various floral patterns are visible in the arches, while swastika, lotus bells, and other Hindu motifs were used to decorate the palaces, giving it an even more grand and exquisite appearance. The Qutub complex, of which the Qutub Minar is shown here, has a number of significant monuments and buildings and is one of the foremost examples of Indo-Islamic architecture of this period. Some of the important constructions inside the complex include the Qutub Minar, the Quwwatul Islam Mosque, the Tomb of Iltutmish, the Tomb of Imam Zameen, the Iron Pillar, and Major Smith's Cupola. Now, one question before I proceed to all of you. Any idea of the approximate height of the Qutub Minar? Anyone? Okay, yeah, it's a 73-meter long colossal tower, and it's made completely of red sandstone and marbles. Located in the complex, the Qutub complex, and stands as the highest brick minaret in the world. It was initiated by Qutubuddin Aibak, the founder of the Mamluk dynasty, in 1200 AD, but it was completed only by 1220 AD by his son-in-law Iltutmish. The minaret here was dedicated to by Aibak to a Muslim Sufi mystic, saint, and scholar of the Chishti order. Here we see the Quwwatul Islam Mosque and the Alai Darwaza. The Quwwatul Islam Mosque was again constructed by Qutubuddin Aibak around 1197 AD. And from the inscriptions inside it, it is clear that 27 Hindu and Jain temples within the Rajput citadel of Lalkot were demolished for the construction. This demolition was not a sign of overpowering the existing religion of the land, but rather a means of showing the dominance of the current rulers and demolishing important political structures of the time. of the defeated. Purnugatas and temple bells hanging by chains were utilized to construct the mosque known as the Might of Islam, which is Quwatul Islam Mosque. The massive stone screen with five graceful arches, the central being the largest, were not built with the true arch principle, but rather used the tribute construction style, which was used in India for over 2000 years before. I will explain further about the tribute style later on in the presentation. But in this presentation, the basic is that lintels will hold up the top and the arch is basically just a false element. The entire work was carried out, the entire work of the mosque was carried out by native Indian craftsmen. The ornamentation of the screens, typical Hindu decorative floral elements, serpentine tendrils, undulating leaves, and other such images. The only element included and introduced by the Muslims were the Arabic inscriptions. Another example of our Indian and Muslim architecture of this time is the Alai Darwaza, which is in the complex and forms the central gateway from the southern side of the mosque. It was built in 1311 AD by Alauddin Khilji, the second Khilji Sultan of the Delhi Sultanate. The gateway was built of red sandstone and white marble and stands as the first ever structure in India that incorporated principles of Islamic architecture, both in construction and decoration. This Khilji art style has intricate patterns and embellishments that are visible in the monument. The style was Iranian, but again, the arches were still corbelled in the traditional Indian way. Another very early mosque, which began in 1190, was the Adai Din Ka Jhopda in Ajmer, Rajasthan. It was built by the same Delhi rulers and had the similar arches and dome style. Here, Hindu temple columns and some new ones were piled on trees to achieve extra height, as shown here, multiple additional height. Now I'll move from the Delhi Sultanate to the Tughlaq dynasty, which dominated parts of North India from 1320 to 1430 AD. The tomb of Shah Rukh-e-Alam, which was built in 1320 to 1324, is shown over here. But again, one question before I proceed. Any idea of where this is built? The tomb of Shah Rukh-e-Alam. Anyone?
Rajasthan?
No, it's in Pakistan actually, Multan, Pakistan. It is a large octagonal brick-built mausoleum with polychrome glazed decorations that remains much closer to the style of Iran and Afghanistan. Timber is used internally, timber is used internally. This was one of the earliest monuments of the Tughlaq dynasty, but it was built during the unsustainable expansion of its massive territories. And again, rather than building it for a sultan, it was built for a Sufi saint of the time. Here shown is the mausoleum of Ghiyat-ud-Din Tughlaq, which is inside the Tughlaqabad fort. The tomb of the founder of the dynasty, which is Ghiyat-ud-Din Tughlaq, who died in 1325, is very austere but impressive structure. Like a Hindu temple, it is topped with an amalkala, small amalkala, the red thing that, okay, I don't have my mouse, but the red thing on top of the dome is the amalkala. It is a segmented notch or stone disc and has a rounded finial or hip knob on top, which is just a decorative element. Unlike the buildings mentioned previously, it completely lacks carved texts and sits in a compound with high walls and battlements. Like many fortifications, including this tomb and the Tughlaqabad fort, the walls sloped slightly inwards at a 25-degree angle. This was as a protection and a fortification technique. The Tughlaqabad fort was intended as the new capital of the Tughlaqs. The Tughlaqs had a corps of government architects and builders, and in this role and many others, they employed many Hindus. They left many buildings and a standardized dynasty style. The third Sultan, Firoz Shah, who ruled between 1351 and 88, is said to have designed buildings himself and has been the longest ruler and greatest builder of this dynasty. His Firoz Shah Palace complex, which started in 1354 at Hisar, Haryana, is a ruin currently, but parts of it are in fair condition. Some buildings from his reign take forms that have been rare and unknown in Islamic buildings. He was buried in the large Hauz Khas complex in Delhi, which was built in the, along with this complex, there were many other mosques and domes in the same area. The reason I haven't shown any of these pictures is because they are currently in ruins and there's not much good pictures of it currently. Now to the Deccan Sultanate, which ruled on the Deccan Plateau. This started with the Bahmani Sultanate, which broke away from the Tughlaqs in 1347 and ruled from Gulbarga, Karnataka, until overruled by Mughals in 1527. The main mosque, which was built in 1365 inside the large Gulbarga fort shown here, is an unusual design because it has no courtyards. There are a total of 75 domes on top as shown, one major one in the center and four slightly smaller ones in the sides, but the rest are all very small domes. The large interior has a central hypostyle space and wide aisles with transverse arches springing from unusually low down, as shown in the right. The distinctive feature of this building is found in other Bahmanid buildings and structures. And one interesting thing about this was that during this era, they used to import tiles. The architect of this mosque is said to have been Persian. Oh, and another interesting example of a construction having Iranian design and Iranian tiles would be the Mahmud Gawan Madrasa, which began in 1460 and is currently a large ruined mosque. So, yeah. Now we move to the Qutub Shah dynasty of Hyderabad, which wasn't absorbed by Mughals until 1687. It greatly developed the city and its surrounding region, building many mosques such as the Makkah Mosque, the Hayat Baski Mosque, and Toli Mosque, as well as the Golconda forts, tombs of Qutub Shahs, Charminar, Charkaman, and Tarmati Bandari. It's shown here on the left is the Makkah Mosque. It is one of the largest mosques in India. And again, before I proceed, I'd like to ask a question. Does anyone here know the approximate capacity of this mosque? I've given a hint, it's the largest mosque in India. So any hints?
5,000?
20,000. It has a capacity of 20,000. The mosque was built between 16th and 17th century and is a state protected monument situated in the heart of old city of Hyderabad. Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah, the fifth ruler of Qutub Shah dynasty, commissioned bricks to be made from the soil brought from Makkah and used it to construct the central arch of the mosque, thus giving the mosque its name, Makkah Mosque. This mosque was also the centerpiece around which the city was planned by Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah. On the right here shown is the Golconda Fort, also known as Golconda, which in Telugu means Shepherd's Hill. It is a fortified citadel and an early capital of the Qutub Shah dynasty and is located in Hyderabad, Telangana. Because of the vicinity of diamond mines located in this area, especially the Kollur mine, Golconda flourished as a trade center and a large diamonds, especially known as Golconda diamonds. The rain produced some of the world's most famous diamonds, including the colorless Kohinoor, which is now owned by the United Kingdom, the Blue Hope, which is owned by the US, and the pink Darya Noor, which I believe is owned by Iran. Here shown on the left is the Charminar, which was constructed in 1591 and is a monument and mosque located in Hyderabad, Telangana. The Charminar's long history includes the existence of a mosque on its top floor. The floor shown above, that is the mosque of the thing actually. It was a mosque for more than 400 years. While both historically and religiously significant, it is also known for its popular and busy local market surrounding structure, which we know of even today. The English name is a translation and combination of the Urdu words char and minar or minar, which directly translates to 4 pillars, showing the eponymous towers around which are ornately decorated and attached by 4 grand arches. On the right here is the Qutub Shah tombs, which are located outside the northern perimeter of the Golconda fort. They contain the tombs and mosques built by various kings of the Qutub Shah dynasty. The gallery of the smaller tombs are of single story, while the large ones are two-storied. In the center of each tomb is a sarcophagus which overlies the actual burial vault in a crypt below. The domes were originally laid with blue and green tiles, but now only a few of those remain. Now to the Bengal Sultanate. It ruled between 1352 to 1576 and not similar to other three. Stone had to be imported to most of Bengal, whereas clay for bricks was came. But even after this, stones were used for the columns and prominent details, often reused from Hindu or Buddhist temples. The early 15th century Ekataki mausoleum, shown on the left in Pandu, is often taken to be the earliest single-domed Islamic building in Bengal. It became the standardized form for smaller mosques and mausoleums in the Sultanate. The Ikhlaqi mosque is large and has several features that were to be Bengali style, including a slightly curved cornice, which is an ornamental mold around the wall of the room, right below the ceiling. You know, the cornices in our room, those cornices. They were the first to introduce them in these buildings. And it also had large round decorative buttresses and decoration in carved terracotta bricks. These features are also seen in the Choto Sona Mosque, which is shown here on the right, and was built around 1500. It was built in stone, which was unusual for a Bengal structure, but it shares the styles and mixes domes with a curved paddy roof base, which was used for the village houses. Hindu temple architecture styles like the Do Chala, Jor Bangla, and the Char Chala followed this idea even more in the future. For large mosques, Bengali architects multiplied the number of domes with a 9-dome formula, meaning 3 rows of 3, being one option used to design it, though there were some mosques with a much larger number of domes. I will get to that again. So yeah, building in this style are the 9-dome mosque and the 60-domed mosque. 60-dome mosque shown here on the right. It was completed in 1459 and is the largest mosque in Bangladesh from the Sultanate period. Along with the 60-dome mosque and the 9-dome mosque, these both were built in the mosque city of Bagarat, which is currently an abandoned city in Bangladesh. Along with these, many other mosques and buildings were also built in this mosque city. An interesting thing about the 60-dome mosque is that it has 26 doors, 11 at the front, 7 on each side, and 1 at the rear. These increase the lighting and the ventilation. On the left shown here is the 5-story Firoz Minar Tower, which is situated in Gaur, West Bengal. It was built by Sultan Saifuddin Firoz Shah of the Habshi dynasty between 1485 and 1489. It was built in the Tughlaqi style of architecture. As you can see here, the first 3 stories are dodecagonal, meaning 12-sided, whereas the final 2 are circular in shape. Now we move to the Gujarat Sultanate, under which the Gujarati lands prospered let me start that again. Under the Gujarati Sultanate, which was independent from 1407 to 1543, Gujarat was a prosperous region under the rule of Muzaffaruddin dynasty. They built lavishly, particularly in the capital of Ahmedabad. The Sultanate commissioned mosques such as the Jamai Masjid of Champanpur in the left, Jamai Masjid of Ahmedabad shown in the right, and many other mosques in this area. They also made structures like the Teen Darwaza, Bandara Fort, and the Dada Harir Stepwell in Ahmedabad. Shown right over here is the Dada Harir Stepwell. It was built in sandstone in the Solar. Again, before I proceed, I'd like to ask another question. Any idea how many stories it is? How many floors this stepwell was to reach the level of the water? Anyone?
10 maybe.
No, just 5 actually. Actually, the picture gave it away over there. So, but yeah, it was a 5-story deep tower and had an octagonal or 8-sided polygon plan from the top. It was built intricately and had a number of large pillars, carved pillars. Floor is spacious enough to provide for people to congregate, and it was dug deep enough to access groundwater at the level, accounting for seasonal fluctuations due to rain. The air and light vents in the roof and various floors and at the landing level are in the forms of large openings. One interesting thing about this building is that from the first story to the water level, there are 3 staircases used, which is considered a very unique feature. This goes as such. At the top level, at the east end of the top level, there is a domed canopy with a descent of 8 stairs leading to a covered gallery. From here, a second flight of 9 steps leads to another gallery, and a flight of 8 steps leads to the lowest gallery, just 2 or 3 feet above the level of the water. At each landing, a corridor runs along the side and leads to other galleries that cross the well at intervals. This step well at the ground level, it is 190 feet by 40 feet in size. Now a little about the Kashmir architectural style there. By 1339, Shamsuddin Shah Mir of the Shah Mir dynasty established a sultanate encompassing the region of Kashmir, which currently consists of modern-day Balistan, Azad Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, and Aksai Chin. This sultanate allowed for the gradual Islamization of the region and the hybridization of Persianate culture and architecture with that of the indigenous Buddhist styles in Kashmir. As noticed earlier, it was till now a merger of Hindu and Jain styles were included, but here Buddhist styles are also adapted. In the capital of Srinagar, in modern day administered Kashmir, Mr. Sikandar Shah Mir constructed the Jama Masjid, shown in the left, which is a wooden congregational mosque that incorporates elements of Buddhist pagoda structures. He also built the Khaneak-e-Maula Mosque. Along with this, there were other mosques like the Alai Masjid, the tomb of Zain ul Abidin, and others which were built by this Shah. Two 14th century wooden mosques in Balistan are the Chakan Mosque in Kapla, which was built in 1370, and the Amburik Mosque, shown here, both of them. Both have stone-built courts with elaborately carved wooden exterior galleries. This was an adaptation of the local styles of the area. The Chakan Mosque, meaning miraculous mosque, is a mosque in the city of Khaplu in Gilg-Baltistan region of northern Pakistan. Dating from 1370, it is one of the oldest in the region and dates to the time when the area's populace converted in mass from Buddhism to Islam. The mosque shares similar architecture as those built in the Kashmir Valley. It is a perfect blend of Tibetan, Mughal, Persian, and Islamic styles of architecture. The Amburik Mosque shown here is another one of the oldest mosques in Balistan and South Asia. The mosque was built by Syed Ali Hamadni and is one of the famous landmarks of Balistan. Now finally we move to the Mughal Empire, which was founded in India, in the Indian subcontinent by a conqueror from Central Asia called Babur. He became the first Mughal emperor of India in 1526. The Mughal Empire ruled in India until 1857 and made significant contributions in the field of architecture in the Indian subcontinent. They did this by evolving a rich and unique architectural style, which is better known as the Mughal architecture. It portrays a fine blend of Central Asian, Islamic, Persian, Arabic, and Turkish styles of architecture with that of the native Indian styles. The symmetrical design, palpable from the monuments, buildings, and courtyards built during the Mughals, form one of the central features of the Mughal architecture. This is more discernible from the symmetrical design towns and forts built by Akbar, who was the great Mughal emperor of the 16th century. Akbar made significant contributions to the Mughal style of architecture. Huge domes, bulbous in shape, large halls, colossal gateways, swayed minarets positioned at the corners, and fine embellishments are some of the other significant signatures of the Mughal architecture. The Mughal emperors, particularly Shah Jahan, were connoisseurs of art and architecture that manifested into several grand and imposing monuments, palaces, forts, masjids, tombs, and other buildings built during this era. Taj Mahal obviously is one of them, but there are also many others which were built by Shah Jahan, like the Jama Masjid and the Shalminar Gardens and the Red Fort. The marvels of the Mughal architecture are spread not only in North India but also to parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. A major aspect of the Mughal architecture is the symmetrical nature of buildings and courtyards. Akbar, who ruled in the 16th century, made major contributions in Mughal architecture. He, here shown is the gate of a Fort Akbar in Agra, which exhibits the Assyrian griffin, the Indian elephants, and birds on its walls as design fact. During the Mughal era, design elements of the Islamic Persian architecture were fused and often created playful forms of Hindustani art. This is shown here in this image actually. You can see the playful mixture of both the existing and the new styles. In Lahore, which was one of the occasional residence of the Mughal rulers, many buildings of great importance of the era were built, including the Badshai Mosque, the fortress of Lahore, the famous Alamgiri Gate, and the colorful Wazir Khan Mosque. The Alamgiri Gate was built somewhere in the 16th and 17th century, and the Badshai Mosque was built around 1673. Later, during the Mughal architecture, under Aurangzeb, who ruled between 1658 and 1707, the Badshai Mosque was built, which I showed earlier, and the Bibi Ka Markaba in Aurangabad. The Bibi Ka Markaba is the one in the bottom on the right, and as you can see, it has a lot of similarities to the Taj Mahal. First, I'll talk about the Wazir Khan Mosque, though, which is on the left here. One of the most ornately decorated Mughal era mosques. It is renowned for its intricate façade tiles works known as Kashi Kari, as well as interior surfaces that are almost entirely embellished with elaborate Mughal era frescoes. Frescoes are a technique of mural painting exclusively using wet lime plaster. The Bibi Ka Markaba, shown here on the right, was commissioned by 1660 by the Mughal Emperor of Aurangzeb in the memory of his first and chief wife, Diras Banu Begum. It is considered to be a symbol of Aurangzeb's conjugal fidelity, and it bears a striking resemblance to the Taj Mahal, which was built for Aurangzeb's mother, Mumtaz Mahal. Due to the strong resemblance, it is also called Dakkani Taj, or Taj of the Deccan. By the 18th century, however, the Mughal style was effectively over. But by this time, many local rulers of princely states and other wealthy people often incorporated styles from this, fusing it with Hindu temple architecture and Hindu architectures to create other fascinating structures. Later on, they also included European styles. I can't proceed after the Mughal Empire without talking about the Taj Mahal, so here it is. The most well-known example of the Mughal architecture is the Taj Mahal. It was built for the wife of Shah Jahan, Mumtaz Mahal, who died in 1631. The main idea and theme of these garden tombs had already been explored by earlier Mughal emperors, and this structure was the culmination of all those previous works into a national landmark. The height of the Taj Mahal is 171 meters, and it rises above a reflecting pool. Okay, before I proceed here, I'm going to now get into the architectural comparisons of Islamic and Hindu architectures, the planning, the structure, the roof, the overall design comparisons. But just note that I'm planning to ask a Q&A on this session on the end, so be a little more attentive, I guess. The temple is an abode of the deity to which it is constructed and contains massive walls, long corridors, compartments, and high embellishments. The sacred part of a temple is the sanctum sanctorium or the Garbha Griha, often deep inside the temple complex. The focal point of this temples are the idol of the deity. Whereas for a mosque, there is no such requirement. It's open in design, and the only requirement is for the devotee to turn toward the direction of Makkah for his prayer. When we come to the walls and the roofs, walls and the surfaces, the walls of the temples expand and vibrate with imagery like that of human figures, animals, and sculptures of various kinds. And the walls have stone and it had the texture of stone and had its natural tint. Whereas for the mosques, the presentation of human figures, sculptures, and imagery are prohibited, and hence there are floral patterns of colored marbles, plaster, stucco paints, and glaze tiles for surface decoration, interior decoration. Now, the main comparison, which is usually done between the Hindu and Islamic style, which is the arches comparison, you could say, the tribute and the arches, arcuate. There are different in buildings, one being the tribute and the other the arcuate. The indigenous architectural style of India before the Islamic reign came in was the tribute order, in which void spaces in the walls were spanned by means of horizontal lintels of beams. There were required lengths of stone which are necessary to make such beams to place them over openings. To say it more simply, in the Hindu style of construction, spanned corbels were held together by making courses project. Like you can see one big and then a smaller above it and smaller until the topmost can be covered by a single piece of brick or a single slab. Whereas in the arc, which is the arcuate style, the arc can be made up of bricks or pieces of stone. The arc transmits the super load safely to the ground and does not fail. Now, there are rumors, the evidences that suggest that the true arc principle might have been in India, might have been known to Indians earlier, but it is the Muslims who are believed to have brought this principle such that the roof or ceiling is held up by this arc, and it is not just a false element. Then we get to the roofs, which includes this arcs though, but yeah, the roofs. The temples have pyramidal roofs or sikharas, whereas with the advent of Islam in India, an entirely new element, the dome came into existence. Here, flat lintels, corbels, and other styles were replaced by arches or vaults, and the pyramidal roof by spire and dome. The necessity of raising a round dome over a square construction introduced multiplicating sides and angles to try and provide a squinches so that the base could be met, usually a squinch of 16 sides, so as to make a square into a circle for the dome. That's about it. Now I'd like to see what you have learned regarding this. So I would go step by step. You have to try and fill in the red marks. So let's see if any of you can answer them. Firstly, to compare it, the Indian style of architecture evolved in various ages in different parts and regions of the country. Whereas Islamic architecture, any idea how it evolved? Okay, I'll just go for it.
It's a Persian.
Yeah, a mixture of Persian, Byzantine, Mesopotamian, and sometimes even Roman influences. Then the main design style of the Indian architecture was the tribute style. What about the Islamic architecture? Anyone?
Arcuate.
Yeah, the arcuate, or also known as the Mehrab style. Just an additional word here. Now, the Islamic style of architecture had the interior design representation is not allowed, and should have a more geometrical based designs and calligraphy. What about the temple Indian style of architecture?
It's a pyramid style. Pyramid style.
No, that is
I'm talking about the interior decoration, the designs.
hide
Animals and animals.
and
Yes, there were imageries of living beings and swastikas, chakras. You shouldn't forget those also, because it's not only the images that are there. There were many notice bells and other decorations. Now, in the Indian style of architecture, the architectural buildings can be traced back to the world's first civilization, Indus civilization, where the style. What about the prominent structures built by Muslims? Like in Indian style, there were palaces, temples, reservoirs, etc., forts, etc. But for the Islamic style, what were the major buildings made? This is I asked
mausoleums.
way, I guess, but the answer is straightforward. It is the mosques, tombs, palaces, etc.
Tombs and mosque.
Yeah. This next one I hadn't actually gone through ahead, so I have mentioned both the sides. The Indian style of architecture, there are three styles of temple architecture: the Nagara, the Visara, and the Dravida style. Whereas in Islamic architecture, there are three styles, which is the Greco-Roman tradition, or the Mesopotamian and Persian style, and the Indian style. Now the next one about the interior structure. The empty spaces in the mosque are filled using mihrabs, arches, vaults, and domes. What about in Indian style?
The sanctum.
Mainly about the
Style.
it had horizontal and vertical elements which were used as brackets. Basically, it's talking about the columns spreading around the structure, and it's not open in nature. That's and finally, the architectural style that was used. In India, it was the distinct architectural style of construction, which varied from geographical location, climatical reasons, racial, historical, and linguistic variations. What about in Islamic?
domes.
No, like the question is more of how they express that architectural style. In India, it was varying from region to region because of this, but it was mainly, as shown as the last sentence says, it has a pyramidal shaped central tower and a beehive shaped curvilinear tower. That's the generic type. In Islamic style, it is expressed in terms other than domes, interior decoration, courtyard, and geometrical design. And with that, I'd like to conclude and thank Friday Forum again for giving me this opportunity to share